We're now going to apply a PNF stretch to the gastrocnemius. So for this, we're going to get the client to plantar-flex their foot against your resistance. So it's much more effective here, rather than you trying to hold the sole of the foot, actually just use your quadriceps muscle so that the client's foot can actually rest there. So first of all, we're just going to stretch the muscle, and then we're going to ask the client to do an isometric contraction against your resistance. And hold that there for 6 to 10 seconds. And then release. Bring the muscle into passive state of contraction. And then we can repeat that again. So contracting against your resistance until the muscle fatigues. And then release. And just bring it into passive contraction. And that's an excellent way of lengthening the muscle groups. Now going to perform a reciprocal inhibition stretch on the gastrocnemius with the client lying supine. So if we come down to the ankle, what we're going to do is actually perform the reciprocal inhibition by having the client to contract their opposing muscles to the gastrocnemius, which of course is the tibialis anterior, which dorsiflexes the ankle. So if you just support the top of the foot and behind the back of the ankle, we're going to actually have the client contract, so actually trying to dorsiflex their foot against my resistance. And just hold it there until the muscle fatigues, about 6 to 10 seconds. And then release. So this is the opposite of the PNF stretch, as a client is actually opposing you with their muscle contraction. So we'll do that again. Client is trying to dorsiflex, and then release. And again, an excellent way of lengthening the muscle groups by working the opposing muscle group. We're going to perform some excellent stretching techniques and releasing techniques for the tensor fasciae lata muscle on the side of the hip and the side of the thigh. So we're going to have our client put their foot towards the opposite knee, just support the knee carefully and just stretch across as comfortably as it will go. So stay within that client's comfort zone. Does that feel okay for you? Mm-hmm. And then use the proximal part of your forearm to stroke down the side of the thigh and up to the side of the hip. So as you're actually doing that, you're actually stretching the muscle by just tilting the knee. That technique may also be performed from the opposite side of the couch. So an alternative technique for helping to stretch out the tensor fasciae lata, you just straighten the client's knee, make sure that you support underneath the knee and above the knee. And what we're actually going to do is again use the forearm to stretch along the length of the tensor fasciae lata whilst we're actually drawing the lower leg down towards the floor. So you can work right along the length of the muscle. Still supporting under the knee as you reposition the leg back onto the couch. So having stretched out and warmed up the tensor fasciae lata with the previous techniques, I'm just going to do some deep palpation into the tensor fasciae lata. Just feeling for trigger points. A long muscle that runs into a tendon, so sometimes the trigger points will be found closer to the hip, and sometimes they'll actually be found along the length of the muscle. Actually feel one there. Now how does that feel? Yeah? On a scale of 1 to 5? Okay, so we're going to apply the counter strain. So the tensor fasciae lata is an abductor of the hip and the thigh, so I'm just going to draw the leg up to the position, minimum amount of pain for the client. Hold it there. Okay, and that's released very quickly. So we're just going to release the leg back down, keep the finger on the point, and then release. Sometimes the trigger points will be closer to the knee. Do you feel another one there closer to the hip attachment? How's that one feel? Okay, so again, I'm going to abduct the thigh. If you do find it difficult to actually hold the client's leg, you can actually obviously use other parts of your body weight. You can actually put your knee underneath the leg just to support it. And you can also obviously get the client to help with the contraction as well. That's starting to release now, so we just draw the leg back down, just to keep the pressure on there, get feedback from your client. Has that one started to fade? And because the tensor fasciae lata does actually arise out of the side of the hip, I'm just going to palpate here and feel for any trigger points. So make sure that you run along the length of the muscle and apply the same technique. With your client positioned near the side of the couch, we're going to apply a soft tissue release technique to the tensor fasciae lata muscle. So the client needs to be near the edge of the couch, because the idea is that we're actually going to be drawing the leg down the side of the couch as we're actually stretching out the muscle group. So you're going to run along the length of the muscle as we're drawing the leg down. And it may be better for your body mechanics if you actually use the proximal part of your forearm. Again, don't forget, you can get your client to help you with the contraction of the muscle. And then just support the foot as you release. We're now going to perform a PNF stretch for the tensor fasciae lata. So if you place one hand just above the client's ankle, one hand just above the knee, and the client is we're going to just first of all stretch out the muscle to the point of resistance. Have the client do an isometric contraction against your resistance, so they're trying to abduct the leg and you're trying to stop that resistance. 6 to 10 seconds, and then release, and then take the muscle into passive contraction, back down again. Again, try to oppose that action. Hold 6 to 10 seconds, release, and again take it into a state of passive contraction before you re-stretch. We're now going to perform a reciprocal inhibition stretch for the tensor fasciae lata. which is an opposing stretch to what we've just performed, the PNF stretch. So client's in the same position, just support underneath the ankle and just above the knee. You're going to be trying to push up as the client pushes down, so they're actually going to be contracting the adductor muscles. So try to push up as the client pushes down. Hold it there 6 to 10 seconds and then release, take it out of the stretch and then perform that again. So you're drawing the leg out, so you're trying to abduct as the client is trying to adduct. If you find that difficult to do, and hold there for 6 to 10 seconds, if you have a low enough table you can actually use your thigh or your knee to support underneath the client's leg against their resistance, so you can use part of your body weight to help to provide the resistance. So with the client lying supine, we're going to work on the quadriceps group of muscles. Having warmed up the muscle group, using again the forearms, we're going to perform a useful joint mobilisation for the hip, which also helps to relax the quadriceps muscle group and aid mobility. So by drawing the knees up towards the chest, supporting around the knee so that your client's foot is underneath your underarm, and we're actually going to circumduct the hip joint just gently, so it's slowly taking it round its range of motion. So you're supporting the knee on the sides as you're coming round and over the actual kneecap as you're drawing the knee down. So it's useful to do this in both directions, particularly if the client is opposing your movement or trying to do it for you. So just take it comfortably within the range of motion for your client, and then just slowly release as you come back down. So we're now going to apply the trigger point and counter strain technique to the quadriceps. So first of all, we're going to just palpate the muscles. So we've got the rectus femoris, which is the largest quad, and we've got vastus medialis and lateralis, and then the intermedius, which actually sits underneath. Just palpating those muscles. You can also use the neuromuscular technique with the thumbs just to diagnostically run the length of the muscle. Feeling the trigger points. Trigger points may be found near the origin of the rectus femoris or on the distal end of the quads near the knee, especially in the vastus medialis, which is where I'm actually palpating at the moment, and they may refer pain down the front of the thigh to the knee. So remember, the origin is the ilium, so the trigger points may be as high up as the actual origin point here, the crest of the ilium, or they may be further down, so it's best to actually palpate down the length of the muscle to actually feel for those trigger points. And again, remember, depending on how well toned the muscles are, remember to just support the surrounding tissue away so that you can actually palpate into the tissue and really feel for the trigger points. So I can feel one there, so I'm just pressing into that area, and then what we're going to do is to just use your body weight and just pull up to actually just compress against that muscle group. So I'm really just pulling up the adductor muscles as a counter strain. What you can also do is actually adduct the muscles. If the client's mobile enough for you to be able to do that, it enables you to get in more effectively. Just hold it there as long as it takes to release. Sometimes 60 to 90 seconds, sometimes less. And then release. And get feedback from your client. Does that one feel like it's released now? Okay, so we're just going to palpate down the length of the rectus femoris. There's another one there, just closer to the attachment of the hip. So here, if you can actually get the client, just support at the knee there, so you're providing a little bit of compression against that trigger point. Start to feel it release. Release the compression and get some feedback. How does that one feel? So those trigger points may be treated along the length of all those muscles by palpating. So if you take it centrally from up the knee, palpate along the rectus femoris and then either side, remembering to support the surrounding tissues so that you can really get in and feel for those trigger points. We're now going to perform a soft tissue release technique for the quadriceps. So the client's leg is actually off the side of the couch. Use one of your hands to actually support, and so here as I'm working on this side, I'm using my right hand, and then I'm just going to get my foot just over the client's ankle and their foot, just so that I can just swing the leg back so that we're actually flexing the knee as we're actually stretching the muscle. So we're releasing the quadriceps as we're flexing the knee. So you're pressing in to the quadriceps with your knuckles and stroking approximately while flexing their knee by pushing their foot under the table. So I'm actually using my body weight to assist that action. We're now going to perform a PNF stretch for the quadriceps, and the client is now in a prone position. So we're going to draw the lower leg up, and we're actually going to draw the foot towards the buttock, support at the lower back, take it to a point where it's comfortable for the client. Okay, and then what you're going to do is the client is then going to contract against your resistance. So they're trying to push the foot away from the buttock as you're trying to push down. 6 to 10 seconds. Slowly release, passively contract and re-stretch. You can see that it goes much further on the second attempt. Notice that you're also supporting there at the sacral area.